Hello, in this lesson let's talk about the second law of thermodynamics. Let's try to define what is the second law and some of its statements. Okay, so to talk about the second law of thermodynamics, there is not a single statement about this law that defines the entire law. So we divide it in at least three statements, right? But we use the second law basically to predict the direction of processes, right? The natural direction of a process to occur, to establish the conditions for equilibrium, to determine the best theoretical performance of cycles, engines, and other devices, and to evaluate the factors that prevent the attainment of the best theoretical performance level. So, using the second law, give us an idea of what is a perfect thermodynamic cycle, so we can compare it with the real ones. Alright, so let's go through the statements related to the second law. Let's start with the Clausius statement. So he stated that it's impossible for any system to operate in such a way that the sole result would be an energy transfer by heat from a cooler to a hotter body. So in other words, it's simply saying that in a system, okay, a thermodynamic system, the temperature, the heat always flow from the hot temperature, the hot body, to the cold body. I know it seems like very easy, right? But it's very important to us. So always the natural direction of this process is from hot to cold, and not from cold to hot. If you want something to go from cold to hot, to heat to be transferred from the cold body to a hot body, you need to add some work. Okay, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But that's the first statement. For any system like this, the temperatures flow from hot to the cold bodies. The second statement is the Kelvin-Planck statement. And they said that it's impossible for any system to operate in a thermodynamic cycle and deliver a net amount of energy by work to its surroundings while receiving energy by heat transfer from a single thermal reservoir. So he's basically saying that it's impossible a situation like this, where you have a thermodynamic cycle and just one thermal reservoir. In order to deliver work to its surroundings, you need this thermodynamics cycle needs to be between two reservoirs, two thermal reservoirs, a hot one and a cold one. Otherwise, you cannot produce work. Yes, for cases like this, for example, where you don't have two reservoirs, the work of the cycle is equal or less than zero. So by less than zero, a negative work means we need to add work to the cycle in order to do something, right? And if it's zero, well, nothing's happening, okay? And the third statement is related to entropy. And it says that it's impossible for any system to operate in a way that entropy is destroyed. In other words, entropy always increases in a system. The net amount of entropy always increases. So the change in the amount of entropy contained within the system during some time interval is the same as the amount of entropy transferred in across the system during this time interval, plus the amount of entropy produced within the system. Okay, so it's that entropy that's produced within the system plus that entropy that's transferred across the system, and that's the amount of entropy. And this statement says that it's always positive, right, or equals zero. when this net entropy equals 0, we say that's a reversible process. In other words, both the system and surroundings can be turned to their initial states, while an irreversible process, in this type of process, the system and all parts of its surroundings cannot be exactly restored to their respective initial states after the process has occurred. So the real processes are all irreversible, actually. The reversible processes are just theoretical. It's just something that we can base our real process, because we want to reduce the irreversibilities, right? So we can produce more work, for example. Here are two systems, okay? We have a pendulum and a gas piston. So if we imagine this pendulum here with no friction at all, and this piston also with no friction, we have reversible processes. So the movement here of the pendulum and the gas piston never stops, right? We have no reversibilities. So the amount of entropy produced is actually 0. But we know we always have at least a little bit of friction between the parts, right? Here the pendulum is immersed in a fluid, right? In the air. We have friction between the walls of the piston here. All these are processes that cause irreversibilities in the system, in the process. So the amount of entropy is always positive. Okay, let's think about a problem here. I want you to think about it. So imagine this rigid insulated tank that's divided in two halves by a partition, okay? On one side of the partition is a gas, okay? And the other side is initially evacuated. They are the same volume, let's call it V, but this one is with gas and this one, there's nothing there, all right? Just vacuum. And we have a valve here that when open, the gas expands to fill this entire volume, okay? Now I want you to think about it using the Kelvin-Planck statement of the second law. Demonstrate that this process here is irreversible, all right? So try to remember the Kelvin-Planck statement we just talked about to prove that this process here is actually irreversible. Think about it and write your answers in the comment sections. See you later.
Now that you've learned the theory, it's time to put that to practice. Check out our next videos for practical problems.